So I want you to imagine a belief system for a second. Like, really picture a theology that somehow manages to combine the teachings of Jesus, Buddha, Muhammad, and Lao Tzu all into one ultimate unified spiritual guide.
Right, which sounds incredibly serene on paper.
Exactly. If you're visualizing that right now, you probably picture something, I don't know, super peaceful, right? Sort of ultimate harmony bridging every major global philosophy.
Yeah, like total inner peace.
But now, I want you to imagine that this exact same belief system involves praying to the Creator to, well, pay off your worldly credit card debts
Right.
and to completely abolish the institution of marriage.
Right.
And this is perhaps the most surprising part, asking for permission to sit on the Creator's lap and pull his beard.
It is quite the theological whiplash, honestly.
It really is.
You go from this grand, unifying cosmic theory that spans millennia of human thought to something that feels incredibly intimate, almost domestic, really.
Yeah, and surprisingly focused on very earthly, everyday logistics. And that's the exact tension we are exploring in today's deep dive. We are looking at a really fascinating translated text from October 6, 2007. It was written by someone named Xu Feng, and it's titled Pray for Chanyuan Celestials.
Right, and this text operates essentially as a foundational prayer, or maybe even like a spiritual manifesto for a group that refers to its followers as Chanyuan Celestials.
Okay.
And they operate under this broader umbrella movement known as Lifechanyuan.
So our mission today is to explore this highly unique text. We are going to decode the worldview of these Chanyuan Celestials and look at how this prayer masterfully balances these epic, genuinely terrifying cosmic stakes.
They are very terrifying.
With some of the most surprisingly mundane earthly requests you will probably ever read in a religious document.
Yeah, texts like this are just incredible artifacts. When you analyze a document like this, you aren't just reading a prayer. You're seeing the exact blueprint of how a group attempts to synthesize incredibly diverse, massive worldviews.
Right, while completely creating a new community structure from scratch.
Exactly. You see the creation of their own specific vocabulary, their own behavioral expectations, and their ultimate cosmic destinations. It's basically world building, but applied to the actual daily lives of its followers.
Okay, let's unpack this from the very top of the prayer. Because we need to understand exactly who is being prayed to and what the foundational theology is before we can even begin to understand what they're asking for.
Makes sense.
So the text addresses, and I quote, Buddha and the greatest creator who create the universe.
Yeah.
And it explicitly lists the primary guides for these celestials as Jesus Christ, Buddha Sakyamuni, Prophet Muhammad, and Lao Tzu.
Right. I mean, it leaves very few massive global religions out of the equation. It casts an incredibly wide net.
It's like they're assembling a spiritual supergroup. It reads like an Avenger-style lineup of world religions.
It really does.
You have Christianity, Buddhism, Islam, and Taoism all represented. From a purely organizational standpoint, if you're trying to appeal to almost anyone, regardless of their background, you just point to this lineup and say, hey, your guy is already on our team.
Yeah, and what's fascinating here is the underlying mechanics of that syncretism, like how they actually blend these massive, sometimes contradictory beliefs together.
Right, because that can't be easy.
It's not, because while they list these historical figures as their guides, the text makes a very subtle but crucial pivot right at the beginning. It states that they take the Creator's revelation, meaning the specific teachings being channeled here by Xu Feng, as the holy principle of everyday thinking and acts.
Ah, okay, so they invite all the big names to the party to get you in the door.
But they still get to completely control the playlist once you're inside.
Wow, that's brilliant.
Exactly. It's a brilliant rhetorical synthesis. It effectively says, yes, all those ancient teachings are valid and they're guiding us, but our specific modern revelation is what you must actually use for your everyday actions.
So it borrows the immense historical authority of the ancient prophets.
Right, but applies it directly to their own contemporary rulebook. It places its own modern teachings right at the center of the follower's life.
And looking at this text, you really need a rule book. Because the cosmic map this text lays out is intense.
Very intense.
The consequences of messing up are incredibly dire. Like, the prayer explicitly asks the Creator to strengthen the follower's confidence so they don't, quote, slip into the evil bottomless abyss and further lost in the transmigration.
It also warns of wandering along heaven only to be gobbled up by hell and once again sink into the abyss of misery.
Wait, okay, before we get into the terrifying abyss of misery, I need to admit some confusion here.
Sure.
The text mentions being lost in the transmigration.
Hmm.
Now, for you listening, you might naturally associate that word with traditional reincarnation, like moving from one life to the next.
Right.
But how exactly is this text defining it? Like, what are they migrating between?
That is a crucial distinction to make because in the context of this specific theology, transmigration isn't viewed as a beautiful natural cycle of rebirth and learning.
It's not.
No, it's framed as an exhausting, endless loop of earthly suffering. It is the trap of the material realm. The goal of the Chanyuan Celestial is to break out of that cycle entirely and ascend to a permanent, higher spiritual plane.
Oh, I see.
So being lost in the transmigration means failing your spiritual mission and being forced to do the grueling human experience all over again, potentially in an even worse state.
Okay, that makes sense. But I still have to push back on the broader tone here because it's where my head just starts spinning.
How so?
Well, how can a text that promotes such a unifying, peaceful, all-stars religious approach, bringing all these peaceful philosophers together, simultaneously hold such terrifying, anxiety-inducing cosmic stakes?
Right, the contrast is stark.
Yeah, you're reading about Buddha and Lao Tzu, who we associate with inner peace,
Yeah.
and in the next breath, you're being warned about being gobbled up by hell and sinking into a bottomless abyss. That must create an incredible psychological tension for the follower. How do they reconcile that?
Well, they reconcile it because that tension is actually a very necessary, very powerful mechanism for community cohesion.
Early.
Yeah, think about it sociologically. If the destination is only positive and there's no danger, there is no urgency. But if you have this idyllic, unified paradise on one side and a literal, evil, bottomless abyss on the other.
The stakes become absolute life and death.
Exactly. The sheer terror of that abyss ensures that the follower clings tightly to the group's holy principle. It creates a deep dependency on the prayer and, by extension, the community to keep you safe from being gobbled up. The peace is the reward, but the fear is the engine that keeps you moving toward it.
Wow. Okay, so if the fear of this abyss is the stick and escaping the cycle of transmigration is the carrot, you would assume the method to get there would be purely spiritual.
You would think so, yeah.
You'd think the solution would be some incredibly complex meditation or a life of fasting on a mountaintop. But the mechanism they use to escape this cosmic terror is shockingly grounded. It's about their bank accounts.
It does become incredibly pragmatic very quickly.
I want to read this exact quote because it's amazing to see in a theological document. The prayer asks the Creator to, quote, vouchsafe the Chanyuan Celestial with bountiful materials, help them get rid of their debts.
Yeah.
It literally asks for wealth. It's almost like spiritual venture capitalism. They are asking the divine for literal funding, good health, and material security to achieve a cosmic goal.
It is a striking departure from many traditional ascetic philosophies.
Right. And I have to offer some genuine pushback to their logic here. I'm struggling with the contradiction.
Yeah.
If the whole point of this theology is to detach from the earthly plane and escape the cycle of transmigration.
Why ask for money?
Exactly. Isn't asking the Creator to pay off your visa bill just tying you closer to the material world? How do they reconcile wanting money with wanting spiritual freedom? It feels like those two things are at war with each other.
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, it actually makes perfect practical sense within the internal logic of their theology. The text explains exactly why this material wealth is requested, and it answers your question beautifully.
Okay, I'm listening.
It says they need to get rid of their debts, quote, in case they will look back and stall their journey.
Oh, wow. Look back and stall their journey. That is such an evocative phrase.
It is, right. And it completely reframes how we think about materialism in religion. In this worldview, the material things like unemployment, sickness, financial debt, worldly stress, they aren't framed as inherently evil things that must be shunned.
So what are they?
They are viewed as incredibly dangerous tethers. They're gravitational pulls. If you are weighed down by a mortgage or if you are chronically sick, you are tethered to the earthly plane. You simply cannot ascend.
Right.
You can't reach the higher spiritual realms they are aiming for if you're constantly looking backward over your shoulder at your earthly logistical problems. So the wealth isn't for luxury, it's for liberation.
I think you can relate to that on a completely non-spiritual level. I mean, think about your own life for a moment. Think about your own experiences with stress or burnout.
Absolutely.
If you are constantly worried about making rent next week, or if you're dealing with a chronic illness, how can you possibly focus on higher intellectual pursuits? How can you work on self-actualization or inner peace when you are stuck in survival mode?
You really can't.
The prayer seems to deeply, profoundly understand this fundamental human limitation.
Yeah.
You just can't meditate on the vastness of the universe if your stomach is growling or debt collectors are calling your phone.
Precisely. It acknowledges that spiritual ascension requires a baseline of earthly stability. It's essentially Maslow's hierarchy of needs, but applied to a cosmic, eternal journey.
Right.
They need the creator to handle the bottom of the pyramid, the jobs, the physical health, the money, so the followers can focus entirely on the top of the pyramid, which is escaping that exhausting cycle of transmigration we talked about. They view debt not as a moral failing, but as a logistical barrier to enlightenment.
Which naturally leads us to the next massive question. If clearing earthly debts and getting a good job is just the fuel for the rocket, where exactly is the rocket going? Like, where are they trying to go once their credit score is perfect and their bodies are healthy?
That leads directly into the specific, radical societal shifts requested in the second half of the prayer. Because the destination they are aiming for isn't just a peaceful state of mind, it is highly specific.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. The text lists some incredibly vivid, mystical destinations. It mentions the 1,000-year world, the 10,000-year world, and something called the Celestial Islands continent.
Right.
It sounds almost like a map from an epic fantasy novel.
Yeah.
But to get a ticket to these higher planes, they have to do something radical right here on Earth.
They do. The prayer outlines a very specific, structural, earthly prerequisite for reaching these mystical continents. The author prays, and this is a direct quote, "Please allow us to build the home without marriage and family as early as possible."
Without marriage and family. That is a massive pivot from where we started.
It really is.
We just went from, please help the unemployed find jobs so they aren't stressed, to let's completely dismantle the foundational unit of human society.
And this raises an important question. What does a society actually look like that believes the traditional structures of marriage and the nuclear family must be completely dismantled in order to reach a higher spiritual plane?
It's hard to even picture.
To understand this, we have to look at how intensive groups throughout history have managed loyalty. Many of these communities have viewed exclusive earthly attachments, like a spouse or a biological child, as direct competitors with one's devotion to the divine or to the broader community.
Oh, because if you are fully, deeply devoted to your spouse, you aren't fully devoted to the greatest creator. Your time, your energy, and your loyalties are divided.
Exactly. By abolishing marriage and the traditional concept of the family, all of that emotional and physical loyalty is redirected. It goes upward toward the creator and outward equally to all the brothers and sisters in the group. In this theoretical society, there's no biological family to prioritize over the spiritual family. It completely flattens the hierarchy of human connection. If everyone is equally your family, no one can monopolize your attention, and you can't be distracted from the group's collective goal.
And we know from the source document that they were actively trying to turn this theory into a reality. Like if you look at the URLs listed at the very bottom of the translated text, you see websites like New Oasis for Life and Lifechanyuan International Family.
Right, the digital footprint is there.
Yeah, these URLs prove this isn't just metaphorical poetry or abstract philosophy we were reading. Back in 2007, this was an organized international movement actively trying to build a physical, or at the very least, a highly structured digital community based on these exact family-abolishing principles. They were actively trying to construct this home without marriage.
They were laying down the literal architecture for a new way of living. They were intentionally separating themselves from the standard societal model of the nuclear family to create this designated oasis. It is a fascinating sociological experiment in trying to engineer human attachment to serve a theological end.
But this brings us to the ultimate paradox of the entire text. It's what I kind of call the grandfather paradox of this movement.
Oh, I like that.
We just established quite clearly that the text explicitly prays to abolish the earthly family. They view it as a hindrance, and they want to get rid of it. Yet the prayer immediately concludes by replacing it with a highly literal, intensely intimate, childlike family dynamic with the Creator.
The tonal shift in the final paragraphs is extraordinary. It goes from grand societal restructuring to something incredibly vulnerable.
I want to read the exact phrasing because the imagery is so striking. After talking about 10,000-year worlds and avoiding bottomless abysses, the followers ask the Creator, quote, "Please allow us to sit on your laps, pull your beard, knead your nose, clutch your ear, and make you laugh every day."
It's very sweet, but also jarring.
So what does this all mean? How does the tone shift so dramatically from escaping a bottomless hell and dismantling all of human society straight into interacting with the Creator as if he is a present physical patriarch in a living room?
It speaks to the deep psychological comfort that this framing provides to the follower. In this final section, they repeatedly call themselves joyful grandsons and granddaughters.
Oh, interesting.
They explicitly label themselves as children who want to, quote, pout in your embrace. They even asked for their ignorant promises to be ignored because, essentially, they are just kids who don't know any better. What you are seeing here isn't just an affection for a deity, it is a total, willing surrender of adult responsibility.
It's like wanting to hit the ultimate reset button on adulthood. If you
Yeah.
think about it, adulthood is inherently stressful. You have financial debts, you have to worry about your failing health, you have to manage complex marriages and relationships.
And in this specific theology, you have to worry about falling into a cosmic, bottomless abyss.
Exactly. It is exhausting. The followers seem to want to go back to a state where a benevolent, physical, omnipotent grandfather handles all the scary stuff. They even end the prayer by saying, "We want to be your obedient servants," or more accurately translated to English, they want to be an obedient or good baby. They want the safety of infancy.
When you frame the creator not as a distant, abstract, formless force, which is how many religions view the divine, but as a tactile grandpa with a beard you can physically pull, you completely neutralize the existential dread we talked about earlier.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yes, the abyss is terrifying, and yes, the transmigration is exhausting, but Grandpa isn't going to let you fall into the abyss if you just sit on his lap and follow his rules. It profoundly shrinks the terrifying, chaotic vastness of the universe into the cozy, understandable safety of a familial living room. The heavy burden of adult autonomy, of having to figure it all out yourself, is traded for the blissful ignorance and guaranteed safety of childhood.
So let's trace the intellectual journey we've just been on in this deep dive. We started by mapping out a multi-faith cosmic worldview, bringing Jesus, Buddha, and Lao Tzu under one specific revelation.
Quite the lineup.
Then we navigated through the surprisingly practical need for credit card debt relief and stable jobs, so followers don't get distracted by the material world. We explored the radical prerequisite of completely abolishing traditional marriage and the nuclear family.
Right.
And we ultimately ended up safely pouting in the lap of a cosmic grandfather, completely surrendered to his care.
It is a remarkable progression of ideas, and it leaves us with a fascinating contradiction to consider, based entirely on the internal logic of this text itself.
What's that?
Well, if this belief system aims to completely abolish the traditional concepts of marriage and family on Earth because they are seen as restrictive tethers, but simultaneously reframes the ultimate creator as a literal grandpa with a rear garden full of obedient children, are they actually escaping the restrictive concept of family, or are they just willingly sacrificing their earthly autonomy to replace it with a single, absolute cosmic one?
Wow, that is a really thought-provoking point to end on. Thanks for exploring this with us today. I highly encourage you listening to keep questioning the information around you, examining the structures of the communities you encounter, and looking for the hidden mechanics behind what people believe. See you next time on The Deep Dive.